think I have to readjust this wheelbarrow. Oh, except it's too heavy. I can't lift it sideways. Usually I can lift it sideways. I'm going to have to just let it go out this way. Woo. And we'll solve that problem by turning it upside down. This poor thing needs new tires again. The tires that we have been able to get around here are not quality. They're all cheap Chinese junk. And Henry finally was able to get some good tires. So we're hoping that that'll make these last a little longer. It's a very handy beast. It's made off a set of plans that Henry got online. And it works great, but you don't want it to sit around with water in it. Now, the weeds are really loving this rain that we've had here. Let's go inside the studio. Now, I've had a problem with this door lately. It is not staying closed. So it has now got a cement block that I pull as tight as I can up against it. And we have some flooding in here. Let's see. There we go. And I have to figure out where it came in this time. We have some leaks in the roof, and we know that. And this is not as bad as we've seen it before, by any sense of the imagination. I'll plug this. I don't like leaving electric cords in the... There we go. I don't like electric plugs. Now, we knew we have a leak in the roof here, so that's why this bucket is under it. But I think the water came in through the back wall again. So, yep, it did. I can tell by where it's coming from. Okay, so that was another reason we bought... See this water down there? This is another reason we bought the gravel that we got delivered. We need 2 French drains, one behind this building and the other behind the workshop. But, yeah, I normally just have buckets set up because the roof leaks. And we know that. And we just haven't been able to afford a new roof, because the people who did the roof originally on this did not do a proper job on it. So it's going to require additional bracing, and they did not put an underlayment underneath the metal roof. So what really should happen is the entire thing should be ripped off, more bracing, underlayment, and then a roof. And that's just not in the budget. So I normally have a bucket here, one there, one there. You'll see there's a little bit of water in there. If it's snowing, we have trouble over here, which is why we have water stains over here. The water stains here are from this polishing arbor, which uses water and throws water everywhere when you use it. And you'll notice that some of my equipment is covered with plastic. That's because if it snows, the water comes in different locations than it does if it rains. That sounds weird, I know, but it oozes in differently somehow. Yeah, I can see this rained yesterday. I've come in here before and found these containers full of water. We didn't get that much yesterday. This stuff is pretty impervious to rain, so I'm not concerned about it. It's just messy. This doesn't get hurt by rain. This has got a top on it in case it did get rained on, because that's a kiln and I don't want it to be damaged. And you can see this got soaked. So I have, this was empty before the storm yesterday. These 3 were empty. So what I do is I have them set up there so that when it does rain, there's something that will catch it. Unfortunately, it's messed up my posters on the wall, but I can't do anything about that. Other than that, we don't normally get standing water over here. We just get some drippies. And there's no drips on the wax bench, thank goodness. And there's actually some equipment under here, which is why it's got a cover on it. And actually, I should have covered this too. but fortunately it did not drip over here. So we will cover that just in case it decides to drip over there this time. Kind of annoying to having to wrap things up, but it's a good temporary fix. And you'll notice a lot of stuff is up, like this cabinet over here. This is a storage cabinet. It's going to go someplace eventually, but it's up on a plastic thing, and these have to get moved out of the water. But yeah, most of our stuff is set up in here so that it can flood. See, there's a plastic thing here. Not the ideal circumstances, but it took us a while to figure out where the water was coming in. And we were blaming it all on the roof, and it wasn't. It's actually the way the foundation and the wall are joined in the back here. They didn't waterproof it, and the water comes in through the wall. So, because the water, we're actually slightly subterranean on this side. So we need to dig all that all the way down and put in gravel, and then there will be no more of this wet stuff in the studio. So sometimes when Henry and I are talking about the things you need to know on a homestead, we talk about life skills. And using a mop bucket has turned out to be a life skill. Now, I can thank Tasty Freeze for my knowledge about using a mop bucket. When we first lived in New Mexico and we were just brand new married, we both worked at Tasty Freeze at one point. And yeah, I mopped the floor, and somebody taught me how to use a mop bucket. So that came in great handy later when I was a manager for a chai tea company, and I needed to teach my boys, all of whom were college kids, how to use a mop bucket, because they hadn't used one either. And my mother did not use a mop bucket at home. She used a sponge mop on the linoleum floors. So yeah, this was something new that I had never, done before I worked at Tasty Freeze. And I never thought I'd need to know how to use a mop bucket here necessarily, although, I do mop the floor on a regular basis. I don't usually use a mop bucket. But it has turned out to be a very handy skill. And not one you would think you'd need in the desert, but when it floods in the desert, you better know how to use a mop bucket. And you better have one. So, as you can see, I've got this thing about a third full right now. I'm going to just empty out the water that's in here in the anticipation that we're going to get more today. But I don't want to build it up in here, because if I keep it down, it'll dry really quickly once we get no more rain. But if I let it just build up, it's just going to get worse and worse. And right now the flooding is limited to the back edge of the workshop, and that's where I want to keep it. So, and most of the important stuff, like that's my kiln for doing enameling, is up on a stand. And as I showed you before, most everything important is up on some sort of a riser. Yeah, plan ahead. It pays. Well, much better. We have a pretty darn full bucket here, but we have the vast majority of the water out of here. And yeah, it may come back, but I learned from experience that if you have a flood like this, the best thing you can do is clean it up. It does less damage, and it'll dry out a lot faster, especially in a normally dry climate like ours. So, life skill achievement. Doo-doo! Yes, we always joke that because I have a master's in archaeology, I have a master's in shoveling. So, I at least have an associate's degree in mopping. So, yeah, back to the house. We'll see what's next. So this is one of those weird things you don't think about. I brought in the hummingbird feeder this morning to replace the juice in it, because the hummingbirds have been eating it up pretty quickly, but I monitor it to make sure the juice is always clean, and it's changed every couple of days. And I noticed this, that some of my flowers are broken. That's from the hailstorm. And when I was outside this morning, starting to check the beds a little bit more closely, I also realized that some of the irrigation lines had actually been ripped out of the heads that they're stuck into in order to distribute the water. So that's just another weird thing that, yeah, is a result of a hailstorm. Had never thought about the fact that it might actually break the little flowers. Fortunately, I think I have replacements.